If you live in the Netherlands or want to move here, you probably know that the Dutch tend to be direct.
Are you going for a wedding or just recording a video here?
Some expats think that it's nice and practical, but there are expats who really struggle with Dutch directness. So if you ever felt like it's too rude or it has really messed up with your mind, in this video we will go over why the Dutch the way they are and how to approach it in a way that will leave you feeling powerful and not depleted. This is one of my 6 video series, The Emotional Side of Living in the Netherlands, where in each video we dive into hidden but very real layers of expats' life. This stuff people rarely talk about, but everyone feels. The first video is already out, so I will leave the link in the video description below, and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Before we judge, we should make an effort to understand. This is, by the way, generally a good rule for life, so let's take a moment to understand the Dutch. Imagine, for centuries people had to build and maintain dikes to prevent flooding, because as you know, most of the Netherlands is below sea level. So when your house depends on your neighbor fixing a dike, you learn to speak clearly. It doesn't matter if you're rich or poor, or if your neighbor is rich or poor, you need to work together and you need to be able to understand each other to a T. By the 1600s, the Dutch were global traders. They were doing business from people all over Europe, Asia, and in many different languages. And of course, when you trade, you need to be very clear on the agreements that you make, especially with foreigners, where all these nuances and readings between the lines are getting just lost in translation. So naturally, it pushed the Netherlands towards a low context culture. Have you heard this expression? It basically means that people communicate directly and explicitly, and the meaning is not hidden somewhere in tone or gestures. I know that this direct communication can sting. That's why later in the video I'm sharing how to cope with that and also how to respond to it in the moment. So keep on watching. When Calvinism spread around 1500s, it gave religious meaning to qualities the Dutch already lived by, such as hard work, humility, and honesty. Any kind of exaggeration or decorated speech became a vanity and even sin. So speaking directly became not just a habit, but a moral virtue. So to the Dutch, being honest/direct means being respectful. I think it's important to understand that. They often don't mean to offend us, this is just the way they are. And they want to be genuine with you. They think that you deserve to hear the truth, even if it stinks. I'll also be honest with you, I think that there are some cases where the Dutch cover their rudeness as directness. I'll share more about it later in the video and also will explain how to cope with it. If you can relate and if you've lately felt so emotionally depleted that you got disconnected from your relationships, career fulfillment, and even yourself, come join my new private community, the Self Lab, where you will learn how to come back to yourself and create that kind of love and career that truly fulfill you. And finally, start attracting instead of chasing. Join us for 7-day free and see what changes when you make space to listen to yourself. Dutch directness can be a lot to handle, even if you are in a stable state. And now imagine if you are a little bit more fragile. For example, when you are emotionally depleted, your nervous system is more reactive. And in this state, even the most neutral feedback can feel like rejection. And that's where it can get tricky in a direct culture like the Dutch one. Let's say you're going through a divorce and you're worried that you might never be able to find the one. It's a very stressful period, so you don't sleep well, you might overeat, you skip the gym sometimes, and you know it yourself that you're not looking your best at the moment. And your Dutch colleague just casually drops it, meeting you in the corridor like, oh, you look like you haven't slept for a week. And that can hit really hard. Or another example, let's just think about something minor, like you had an argument with your partner the previous night, and today you're having a feedback session with your boss. You're still processing this argument and it took some energy out of you. And now this Dutch boss is just telling you everything what's on his mind without filtering it or without polishing it for you. And because of your state that has nothing to do with your work, you might take this feedback badly. Interestingly, Dutch directness doesn't get to me as much. Here and there I do receive weird comments from the Dutch that might hit a weak spot. Later in the video I will tell you how I deal with that. Highly sensitive people is not a diagnosis or disorder. It's more like a description of a certain category of people. There is a long list of traits, like how you can know if you are highly sensitive or not. For example, if you're sensitive to loud music, catchy fabrics, spiky sweaters, or strong smells. Also, if you tend to feel a bit drained after long periods of talking or long periods of stimulation, for example, if you've been out in a bar or if you've been shopping in Rudement and there are a lot of people, you might feel like, I need a breather after this. Highly sensitive people are also super empathetic, so you might be very perceptive towards other people's moods. And maybe sometimes you even know better than this person next to you how they're feeling, because you can catch some subtle nuances like how they talk and how they express themselves. So there are tons of advantages of being a highly sensitive person, but as everything, things can have a flip side as well. And the flip side here is that highly sensitive people take things a little bit too close to heart, and they're also prone to overthinking. So highly sensitive people might struggle a lot with the Dutch, especially with how the Dutch deliver criticism. Highly sensitive people might think that it's a little bit like too harsh, because as I said above, they're hearing not only what's being said, but also how it's said. And the Dutch can be quite blunt and quite straightforward without any emotions, and that can be perceived by highly sensitive people as jarring. They can start internalizing like, what did I do wrong? Understand that Dutch directness typically has nothing to do with you. If the Dutch are rude in their feedback, it says more about them than about you. For example, I get a lot of comments on this channel from the Dutch, and some of these comments are just plain rude. In these comments, the Dutch cover their rudeness as "we are just direct." I gave an explicit example in this video, you can watch it there. I'm not gonna go into details not to make this video unnecessarily long, but basically in this video a Dutch person left a comment where they were insulting me and they were like, hey, you know, I am just Dutch, I am just direct. I read this comment and I was like, this is on you. This has nothing to do with me. If their remark was direct but respectful, ask yourself, what can you learn from it? Because direct feedback is actually powerful. It helps us understand what the person is actually saying instead of having this dance around it, like they are saying this but they actually meaning this, which can be very confusing. So with the Dutch, you actually have a chance to get the full message and improve if it resonates. If a Dutch person said something rude, most likely they're not sitting at home thinking like, oh, how was it perceived? Did I offend someone? Was it like too much? They said it, forgot about it in a second and moved on. So why then should I think about what they really meant by it, or like what they thought about my reply or the absence of my reply? And this framework really helps me get out of my head and understand that it's not worth investing my time in it. Instead, I think like, okay, how can I take care of myself today? Am I feeling down? Do I need to go for a walk? Do I need to call a friend? Do I need to journal? Do I need to discuss it in my community or talk about it with my therapist? By the way, I have a community of people called the Self Lab that can help by sharing their experience and supporting you through your difficult situation. So if you're struggling to process or navigate a difficult situation and wondering, is it me? Is it them? Is it the country? Like, what's going on? Join us for 7-day free and we will be able to answer your questions so you can leave feeling supported and at peace. So this was the chapter on how to cope with Dutch directness. But I know that many of you don't want to look stupid or lost for words, so we also want to learn how to respond to Dutch directness on the spot. And that's what we're going to cover now. I'm not someone who thinks on my feet. I need some time to process and think about a situation. And for a long time I was struggling to accept that, because I did not want to look like I don't know what to say. And by now I've learned to accept that this is who I am, this is how I'm wired. And that comes with a lot of advantages as well, because I'm thoughtful and I can analyze situations quite deeply, which is super helpful in the coaching work I do. And you know what? Maybe a weird remark like, oh, you haven't slept for a week, or did you gain some weight, or the quality of your work sucks. Maybe these don't deserve to be responded to anyways. I'll repeat that. A weird remark, a weird comment doesn't deserve our response. In Russia we have a saying, if you get into an argument with a fool, you get down to their level. Basically, it means you are becoming a fool yourself. And this really helps me to understand what's important and how do I want to respond to a situation. Most likely, in cases like this, my time is better spent elsewhere. I have this amazing YouTube channel, I have coaching, I have friends, I have my family. You know, my life is so rich. I have so many other areas where I can pour my energy into. And if whatever they said affected me, I need to look inside and understand why. And most likely, they are not the right person to do this processing with. I'll do this processing in a safe space. For me, it's typically by myself, with my coach or my therapist. Having said that, of course, there are some cases where we can't simply ignore Dutch direct feedback like that. If you had a feedback session with your boss and they were a little bit too blunt or direct with you, I think it's important to make an effort to understand what they're really saying. And here you can ask for clarification. You can say hey, I tend to take things quite literally. Could you please explain what you mean by saying this? Alright, thank you so much for watching this video until the end. Quick reminder that this video is part of my video series, The Emotional Side of Living in the Netherlands, where in each video we uncover a real emotional experience of expat life. So subscribe to my channel not to miss the next episode. And if you're ready for a real transformation in your relationship with yourself, others, and your career, I'll see you inside my exclusive community, the Self Lab.